Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku left Japan to prove everyone wrong part 2. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 3, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story 𝗧𝗵𝗲 from Wattpad. So let's start the video. Jack jumped out of the mirror on the ceiling, which ended up in him breaking the calendar. Sally scolded him for making noise. "Should both of you," Parker said, trying to be somewhat commanding, but his soft voice had the opposite effect nonetheless. Both of them zipped their mouths and continued decorating. It was July 15th. The whole class prepared the classroom for their precious school president. It had been a year since his little debut during the festival. Izuku was tired. He was out late last night since, even though he had his provisional license, it was when he was in Japan, so it took a while for them to register him an American one. Then when that was issued, his dad dragged him around since he was the number 2 hero in America. Even though he did enjoy the father-son bonding, he was exhausted from saving and helping out. Izuku opened the door and multiple party poppers were blasted. "Happy birthday, Izuku!" The class yelled. Izuku teared up. Class 1A or any of his school in Japan ever celebrated or even acknowledged his birthday minus his friends. He smiled. Holding back a tear, his fellow broccoli brother patted his back and they all started the celebration. The first 2 classes just consisted of them enjoying Izuku's birthday since Mrs. Payton allowed it. Sean and Parker linked their forearms in a rectangle formation and basically scooped Izuku up. Their arms became Izuku's throne as he was carried around the class. The 2 periods were full of laughter, occasional thuds, and a few things breaking. Parker smiled at the bright boy who was a bit taller than him. "Parker, take off your mask for the day," Lily said, excited. The tired boy was taken aback and shook his head. Izuku smiled gently. "It's okay, Par, you don't need to do that," he said. Parker smiled but sighed, taking his mask off, and his pale skin showed his slightly flushed cheeks. He did it. Wesley was being the crackhead he was and basically running around the class while Mrs. Payton didn't even try to stop him. Izuku received personal gifts as well as a class gift. It was a picture book of the festival where the whole school took a picture. The middle was Izuku on a podium where he had a gold medal, his class in front crouching down or in the air while the school was in a circle formation, all smiling. There was multiple pages of pictures. He smiled and thanked the class. It was genuinely the best school for him. The class was too busy being invested at Lily and Jack having a wrestling competition to see Parker handing Izuku a gift. It was a medium-sized black box with a red ribbon carefully and nicely wrapped around it. Izuku opened it, being careful not to ruin the nice ribbon, and inside was small notebook with a star-shaped lock, and right below it was a golden necklace. With further inspection, the necklace was the key to the notebook. It was a golden star key. "Just thought it was nice," Parker said in a quiet voice. Izuku smiled brightly and hugged the shorter male. "Thanks, Par. This is awesome," he said, putting the box down and putting the golden necklace on. He gave an closed-eye smile. "How does it look?" he said, Parker nodding and giving a thumbs up. The whole day continued. The gang had fun and continued messing around as always, teachers casually scolding them apologizing and doing the same thing. 7 minutes later, when Izuku got home, his parents and the servants in their home welcomed him with a warm smile. He spent his time chatting and watching movies with his parents before going on call with his friends in Japan, all of them wishing him a happy birthday and chatting about different things. "So, can you get rid of this kid or not? Are you a maniac? The kid's the son of the number 2 hero. What's our pay?" "TSK fine, what do you want for it?" "Finally, let's discuss the nomus. You're creating one. What, you don't really expect me to trade one for a mere kid? Deal's off then." Okay, let's talk this out," Shigaraki growled. He was annoyed. "Were all Americans such hard heads? Jesus, how hard could it be to kill a single kid?" Dobby stared at the light blue-haired raisin like he was an idiot. Did he not watch the live? He leaned to Toga, who was drinking some BLD. She shrugged. "Guess not. Kinda feel bad for whoever Shiggy paid," she said, slightly giggling too. Both of them knew that the plan would fail, but they knew it would be a funny sight, so none of them acted. Kurogyari couldn't help but sigh at the 3 of them. It was almost as if he became a parent. It was exhausting nonetheless. He just cleaned the cups. I wanted to just get some my DM in Arizona tea, but no, the next thing I knew, I was knocked out by a blunt object, and here I am, one strapped to a metal chair. My arms and legs were both restrained by reinforced leather. I look at the kidnapper. She looked pretty ugly to be honest, for I mean look at that dry skin, clearly she's been in the sun too long. Geez, girl be looking like a dried up raisin over here. As Izuku was casually critiquing the villains in his head, they all felt a bit awkward. Is this kid a pervert or something? He keeps staring at me. Izuku scrunched his nose. Beach, please, you wish I stared at you? I'd rather pour liquid nitrogen in my eyes than ever look at you that way, he spat, the girl feeling a bit insecure. 3, Woden, who hurt you? 7, another villain said on his phone, clearly not you guys, y'all gonna kidnap me but do nothing. What is this? A reality show? Izuku was just spouting nonsense since he was bored. The third villain couldn't help but wonder, kid, are you not a bit scared? We did kidnap you. Yeso. Look man, I almost had my throat disintegrated once and his hands felt like sandpaper, so it was twice as bad. So no, not really. 2, all 3 looked at the kid, all thinking that the kid's lost it or he just has no self-awareness. The villains tried to scare and intimidate Izuku. The girl even placed a knife to his neck but he just yawned. So, you guys got some food? Monopoly. Anything. The tallest villain groaned. For the last time. Shut up while we contact our boss, he growled. Izuku rolled his eyes. 𝗕𝗵𝗋 who shoved a 𝗕𝗵𝗋 branch up your butt, he said, earning 2 chuckles from the other villains. 4, Hisashi looked at his phone. A bright red message on his screen. Izuku Midoriya, lost signal. Hisashi immediately opened his phone and started contacting his colleagues and getting professionals on the case. His phone was hooked to Izuku and Inko's phone, and if something bad were to happen, they would have to shake their phones and close it down, which would alert Hisashi's phone of a lost signal. How did Izuku do this? Well, the leather wasn't as tough as he thought. Surprisingly, the villains were quite a bunch of idiots. None of them noticed Izuku pretending to be tied up while his hands were shaking his phone. Izuku was bored. Honestly, if he wanted to leave, he could have gotten up and dipped, but he was a nice person, so he decided to stay until reinforcements came, and because he wanted to annoy the SHT out of them first. He had nothing to do, so what's the next way to annoy someone? Yes folks, he just started singing Rick Roll, Smash Mouth and TikTok songs. The female villain actually joined in while the other 2 started banging their heads on the wall. 11, an hour later, and Hisashi broke down the wall. 2 other pro heroes were with him because they suspected it was dangerous since someone as strong as Izuku got kidnapped, but the sight they saw was entertaining to say the least. It was Izuku sitting on what looked like large purple muscled corpse. They saw it on Japan News before. What was it? Naru Moni Manyu Nomu. Yeah, that one. Izuku was sitting on a lifeless Nomu, just chilling on his phone while an old man wearing a suit was tied up. On the ceiling, 3 villains were all plastered on the walls using tape, and all of them except Izuku was knocked out. 2, Hisashi's mouth pressed into a thin line. Can you at least give me a chance to seem like a cool dad who saves his son? He pouted. Izuku shrugged. Old man, I waited for 2 hours. I gave you a chance? His son retorted. 5, the other pro heroes were amused and shocked at the sight, but of course, work comes first, so they arrested the villains and secured the Nomo. Hisashi ruffled Izuku's hair, making it fluffier than it already was. Geez, you brought your bad luck to America, his dad joked. 1, Izuku acted offended. Excuse-moi, America's been cursed since 𝗔𝗓𝗵𝗶. He rolled his eyes. Even though the tangerine was already kicked out his seat, it still had a terrible impact on the government, so the pros had been having a hard time. 22, the father and son duo laughed it off and went home. Who knew such a dangerous event would be a fun little workout for Izuku? Shigaraki banged his fists on the desk. I'm gonna kill that 𝗕𝗵𝗋 bug. He's totally been glitching my game, he mumbled. Thinking of a new plan, Shigaraki thought about the new plan for UA, so he had to stop his Midoriya hunt for a bit. 1, 𝗕𝗏𝗁 whatever, let's go attack UA next week. Dabi and Toga looked at the others. Before agreeing, they didn't mind, but at this point, they were bored since nothing's been happening other than the fact that the boss seemed more irrational without his emissary. So luckily, Kurogyari was their ABI, and Toga looked at the others before agreeing. They didn't mind, but at this point, they were bored since nothing's been happening other than the fact that the boss seemed more irrational without his emissary. So luckily, Kurogyari was there looking up at the sky. It was pretty nice if we were to exclude the fact that a bunch of teens were currently fighting in it. Get back here, you little. I'm not running away, you slow beach. Izuku was fighting with the school president of another school. Why? They were challenged for a duel between each school's 5 representatives. Faith was currently dominating the one she was fighting with. Wesley was toying with his. Parker took the one he was against in less than a minute. Sally had restrained her opponent since she didn't want to hurt them too badly, and as for their leader, Izuku was messing around. He didn't care about the surroundings as he kept throwing knives and jumping around while attacking the student. The poor teen didn't even have a chance to attack as he had his hands full with blocking. Faith held up her unconscious opponent by the forearm, throwing the dude over her shoulder as she stared at the fast blur that was Izuku Midoriya, or most commonly known as Pinpoint. They finished their latest mission a few days ago, but it left all of the members pissed. The most ticked off one was none other than the group's strongest himself. They were ordered to let go of Target last minute because of government authorities stepping in and taking credit for the group's work. Truly, they wanted to rip apart the company who took their mission when they were about to finish it. Getting back to the fight, Izuku stood still, finally releasing all his pent-up anger. The other students' forearms were black and bruised from trying to block Izuku's punches and kicks, while the surroundings had knives stuck in them or were shattered to shards. His opponent didn't have the energy to even lift a finger, collapsing after he managed to somehow block some of the attacks. Izuku looked at the boy before being struck with a flood of guilt. He ran over and called his animatronic bird, who had effective treatment remedies. The gang walked over to the green-haired boy. He had grown for the past 2 years. He's been America. His undercut gave his green hair a more bright look. The new hairstyle allowed his neck to be exposed, which allowed people to see the scars from training. He was wearing a black sleeveless turtleneck top which fit his more buffed physique, proudly showing off the tattoos on his arms. His ears had multiple piercings, and not to mention he had a tongue piercing that could be seen when he talked. The gang felt proud to see his appearance finally matching his personality. Before, his whole scrawny physique didn't seem right since Izuku had full control over his movements when fighting. Finally finished with the fight, the gang left the other school students at the gate of their school before heading back to theirs. Parker walked with his arms behind his back, supporting his head as he walked. In the past 2 years, the timid boy had grown more talkative and a bit more social. Though he was still a true introvert who enjoyed being quiet, he still wore his mask and oversized clothing, so not a lot changed. Wesley had gotten taller, now being the 4th tallest in the group. His mischievous smirks became less childish and more intimidating throughout the years. His rude and inappropriate actions were still the same. No matter how tall one can get, it won't overshadow their personalities, whether that be good or bad. Sally's hair had gotten longer, so she now had her pink locks in 2 braids. She still held the gentle aura around her. Even when she's fighting, she seemed more mature than she already was, but that's to be expected since she's basically the parent of the group. Faith's hair got long throughout the years, so she used a knife to cut it. Now often being mistaken for a short male, her resting beach face got worse, which made people fear when she was just trying to buy some iced tea, although she didn't mind it since it meant people would leave her alone. Sean's voice got deeper through pills, and they felt more like themselves. They had grown their hair a bit to the point it reached their shoulders. They used to have a thin, malnourished figure, but they gained some muscle and looked less like a twig now. Lily's personality stayed the same like the others. She got tired of her old hairstyle, so she would style her purple to pink umber hair differently every day. She was still flat as a board, which Wesley would often joke about, but her lovely lover would always throw the gremlin inside the mirrors for an hour or two. Speaking of her lover, Jack had grown his hair out. It was now tied in a ponytail. His face and arms still covered in band-aids and such since he practices jumping in and out of the mirror for fun a lot. 3 All of them had gotten much stronger, and they were aware of that. They would hold friendly matches between each other to continue to strengthen each other up. Needless to say, they were a force to be reckoned with. They arrived at their school where they were met with Mrs. Peyton. She gave them a smile. It wasn't a nice one, meaning something was wrong. Everyone reacted quickly and running off. A certain green-haired boy was caught before he could run off. He gulped and hesitantly looked behind him. Hey, Mrs. Peyton. The teacher glared at the student. What's this about you guys participating in a duel without school acknowledgement? She asked. Izuku looked away, his sweat casually rolling down his forehead as the adult crossed her arms. You guys already won against them in this month's school war, so why did you accept it? For fun. Izuku didn't meet her eyes as he spoke. He knew they were in trouble. Faith was in a locker, without anyone else knowing, and she clasped her palms, praying for Izuku. Wesley was inside the ceiling along with the rest of the group. They had knew a few of the ceiling tiles could be moved, so they basically made space in the ceiling, their little hiding spot. Izuku was dragged to the principal office where he had to explain why the other school called them on behalf of the students who were left on the school gate. The principal smirked and gave Izuku a nice offer. Catch your gang and I'll lesson Your involvement in the situation, Izuku, in less than 20 minutes had all 7 of his friends in the principal room, tied up together with a rope to prevent them from escaping. 3. I can't believe we're on probation for a week. Are you kidding me? We're lucky we got off with just probation. Agreed. Luckily, the school is used to our antics, so they knew it was going to happen. Geez, didn't expect our boss to betray us for less punishment. Look man, I got away with 4 days of probation. I'm pretty happy about that. 1. Wow, thanks. They all joked as they went to Izuku's home to chill out. They were told to finish all their assignments for the next 2 weeks early or else their probation would be extended, so they were all going to work in Izuku's house since it was the largest and comfiest. They all joked as they went to Izuku's home to chill out. They were told to finish all their assignments for the next 2 weeks early or else their probation would be extended, so they were all going to work in Izuku's house since it was the largest and comfiest UA students. Class 3A. The class were excited since they were flying to America for hands-on experience learning since UA had pulled strings throughout Japan for them. 𝗎𝗓𝗓 thought that America, where no one will give them extra treatment just because they're UA students, would be good for the teens. They were taught English throughout their curriculum so they could understand the basics of it, knowing enough to know what someone was talking about. At least 𝐒𝐭𝐴 was talking with Uraraka about how America had more clothes since the ones at Japan were more appropriate to say the least. 1. Todoroki was sleeping on the plane. He didn't care about the gossip, and honestly he was just glad to be in another country from his life. Donator Bakugo was having a one-sided argument with Kirishima, who was expressing how he thought a certain character was a bit more powerful than the one Bakugo played as. Kaminari was in his lover's embrace while they were chatting away. Right in front of their seats were Aizawa and Mike, who were in the same position as Kaminari, and Shinso. 1. Mina was laughing at Siro's misfortune. He was trying to drink soda, but then some slight turbulence happened, which ended up with his pants and the hem of his shirt getting soaked. 3. The rest of the class were chatting away, excited to finally be away from villains, and they were excited to try out new training. The gang was asleep. Surely that would mean peace. It would if they were asleep in a place that could be considered somewhere sleepable. Where did they end up? The pool. Somehow, the 8 teens who finished their homework got mildly drunk and ended up in the pool. Izuku was somehow on the diving board, his hoodie slightly choking him as it kept his body from falling into the water as he was passed out. 5. Sally and Faith were both soaked on the cold pool pavement. Jack and Wesley were in a soaked get-along shirt while Lily was asleep on the beach chair, just enjoying herself. Parker was the only one that wasn't at all soaked. He was curled up in a chair, asleep. 1. Hisashi and Inko both stared at the scene. The butler couldn't give an excuse on what happened. Maybe we should lock the alcohol cellar. I don't think that'll work, honey. Izuku would either break it or lockpick it. So do we limit buying for a bit? They'll still buy some. Let's just pretend we didn't see this. Everyone code W. 3. Inko clapped her hands. The staff grabbed the large wooden backdrop that was identical to the pool, which they placed in front of the pool, creating the illusion of a pool with no drunk, passed out children in it. 6. The Midoriyas did like having fun, but they still had a general reputation to uphold was the excuse, but in reality, Mama Inko just thought the backdrop would provide the kids with some nice shade. It was a warm day after all. 3. 2 days later, Izuku was happy. His class was going to New York for a field trip. It was going to be quite the long trip. His school luckily bought out a plane for them. It would take about 5-6 hours to get there if they went by plane. If not, it would have taken about 43-44 hours by car. 1. Jack was sleeping soundly while Lily and Wesley were drawing on his face with a marker. Sure, they were practically pros, who were supposedly one of the most professional professions, but at the same time they were in high school and they were all assholes to each other. Sally and Faith were making out, which earned a few O's from half the class and the other half throwing pillows at them to stop, making them feel single. Saying, "You all shut up, let the adults talk." Aizawa glared at his students who were too excited. He was annoyed beyond belief. He was talking to the pros who were going to be in charge of the students, training the students who were lacking on insight were to head with America's number 3 strategist. The students lacking with physical prowess were to learn from America's number 3 militant hero. The ones lacking in other areas were all taught by different number 3 pros. Uraraka noticed something. I realized that all the pro heroes that we're working with are all number 3. She questioned. The class nodded. They weren't being ungrateful, but because they were taught by the symbol of peace, the number 1 hero, they were a bit skeptical if they were going to learn anything. 1. Aizawa needed his coffee, but he sucked it up and explained, Despite not wanting to, America is about 26 times larger than Japan. Do you think they have the leisure to get the best of the best for you? The class looked down, a bit in shame and a bit of embarrassment. Plus, the higher-ups are busy training the newer heroes here. They won't just ignore the American students for Japan ones. Shinso nodded. Personally, he just wanted to go to skating and swimming, but of course, he wasn't here for vacation. Mina wanted to see her bestie. Dsuro was talking to Denki about how excited they were to meet up with their friends. Even Aizawa missed his problem child. Not that he would admit it. Class 3 thought that the training would be somewhat easy. Well, dead wrong by the end of the first day. Todoroki was overheating due to his quirk over usage. Bakugo didn't even have the energy to be in, but Kirishima was like jelly on the couch. Uraraka was throwing up. Tsuyu was passed out. Aoyama didn't feel sparkly at all. Hagakure was exhausted from the running around. Ojiro and Shoji were already asleep on the floor. Kuda's voice was sore. Tokoyami was holed up in the dark corner. He was mumbling about the world being too light. 7 Yaoyorozu was drinking water with ice. Sada was eating to somewhat get his energy back. Mineta didn't even have the capacity to be a perv. Mina, Dsuro and Denki were in the kitchen. They got packs of ice and they were snuggling with them. Ida, even though he was tired, he still managed to have a stick up his butt. Everyone, get some rest. There will be more assignments tomorrow. We wouldn't want to wake up late and be tardy. Shut the hell up, 4 eyes, Bakugo yelled after drinking a gallon of water. Class 3A was clearly tired. What did they do exactly? For the morning, they all wore quirk restricting bracelets that weighed 30 kilograms each. They had to run around, following the pros by foot for hours. While running, they were assigned different tasks such as helping construction workers, helping the police, helping civilians stay calm. After that, they all went to the landfill. They participated in helping sort out the trash that weighed more than their quirk-canceling bracelets. That was just the physical part. When they took off the bracelets, they were tasked on using their quirks for hours without breaks. They were using it to clean the area because it was a hero's job to help out everyone, even the small things. They were tasked on using their quirks for hours without breaks. They were using it to clean the area because it was a hero's job to help out everyone, even the small things. They thought they were going to New York for a field trip, not more missions. The class groaned as they all had work to do. Mrs. Peyton promised them that after the missions, it was going to be a field trip. The gang all had separate missions, all of them being tasked to help out with a pro hero in different cases. Jack was with America's #2 hero, which was Izuku's father, because they had to solve a murder that happened in a mirror house. Jack carefully inspected the mirrors, and in the mirror realm, the scenes that the mirror saw were displayed as the case was going on. The #3 strategist was talking with Hisashi. Jack came out of the mirror and talked to them about the culprit. He was disguised, but Jack explained the person's overall build while talking. Jack noticed a sweating redhead and a screaming blonde, both looking tired enough to collapse. What the heck is going on over there? Oh, just the UA students we were assigned with. I was a bit disappointed when they could only handle 60 kilograms overall. Jack was a bit confused. From how UA so boasted about their students, he thought that the #1 school would be a bit more impressive. Are they doing it to skip out on work? My class handled 80 kilograms on each bracelet. Jack was contemplating whether UA was good at concealing their strength, or they were just inferior, wanting to see which one it is. He smirked and walked over to the 2 UA students. Hey, how are you? Kirishima gave out a toothy grin. It's nice to see someone who looks our age, he said in Japanese. Bakugo face palmed and muttered to Kirishima, sorry, I'm great doing. Kirishima said, scratching his nape, being a bit nervous since he didn't have the best English marks. He was also tired, so he was bending a bit. Jack smiled. Quite a good day today, huh? I'm 𝗧𝗪𝗓𝗏. What are your guys' hero names? Bakugo, being the more fluent one, groaned and answered for Kirishima. Were UA students back off, small fry? If you really want to know, Shitty Hairs is Red Riot. I'm Ground Zero, one, he answered, not caring if he was making an enemy or not. It was his usual way of speaking anyway. Jack nodded. Nice to meet you. Well, it seems I have to get going. He waved, walking back to Hisashi, who just finished talking with the strategist. Amateurs' bad posture leads to more fatigue, so them slouching while talking to me meant that they aren't faking it, they were genuinely tired. I guess I can report that to the leader. Lily was with her aunt patrolling in the recent hotspot for gunshots when she stumbled upon another pro hero with 3 students. She wanted to see who they were since who basically knew everyone due to always being on her social media. didn't know them, was very curious looking at their uniform. They weren't from here since they have battles with schools, and she's never seen that uniform. It looked familiar, but since she couldn't recall it, she deemed it insignificant. Waltzing over to the small group with her aunt was talking to the other female pro-hero. Lily took this time to walk over to the 3 female students. One had black hair tied in a high ponytail. Other had a brown bob cut, and the last one resembled a frog. She approached them and started talking to them. They were relatively nice but a bit arrogant. Their way of speaking felt like they were talking to Lily as if she wasn't on their level. So what's your hero name? Creati, the everything hero, asked. She held a gentle, professional smile. I'm Interlove, nice to meet you guys. The 3, who weren't really that focused on other pros that weren't in Japan, didn't recognize the name even though it was one that was known throughout America. When Lily got their Insta tags, she got what she wanted. Waving to them, Lily went back on patrol with her aunt. Uraraka felt a bit off. She felt her Lily's voice was familiar, but she couldn't remember why. Yaoyorozu smiled. She was nice, she commented. Tfuyu agreeing. Uraraka was distracted, not responding to Yaoyorozu. 2 Parker and Sean were in the same area. They weren't working together since they had separate cases to work on, but since it was in the same neighborhood, they decided to give each other a hand when it came to thinking about the cases. Parker was dealing with a possible suicide and Sean's case was a kidnapping. They were really focused on the case that they didn't notice that there were 3 other students in the area. One Aoyama was interested in the crowd of pro-heroes but didn't let himself get distracted. Jiro saw 2 students in the area. She was curious if they were also learning from the pros like them, but the 3rd militant hero answered her without her even needing to ask. That's Breathtaker and Viewer. They're both Brunhart students, but they get assigned missions because of their success rate when working. Todoroki was intrigued. They were called pro-heroes while Class 3A were still classified as heroes in training. Aoyama liked Breathtaker's hero name. It felt very theatrical to him, even if that wasn't the intention. Oh, stop dawdling. Get back to doing push-ups. We're helping out in gathering the rubble and putting them aside for safety measures. The pro-hero instructed. While they were doing that, Todoroki's eyes met with Parker. Both had the tired look but ignored each other. Sean, on the other hand, realized them as UA students and silently took notes in his head on their behavior while he worked. Sean, on the other hand, realized them as UA students and silently took notes in his head on their behavior while he worked. Wesley was pouting as he worked. He was near the boring adults. They were serious, a bit too serious for the mischief-inducing male. Nonetheless, he cooperated and worked since he was a hero. He didn't let his personal feelings get in the way of his efficiency. He was with the police, looking for evidence and clearing out the remaining glass that was broken on the ground. This bakery was the victim of a robbery, and Wesley didn't like people messing with sweets or pastries. While crouching down to look at the floor better, someone accidentally tripped over him. The person clearly didn't see Wesley, which made him upset. He wasn't short anymore when he looked at who tripped over him. He had the deadest stare ever. It was a tiny gremlin with ball for his hair. Another male with the same uniform rushed over, apologizing for the tiny idiot's mistake. Why are you here? Can't you see that the police are working? Wesley said, agitated. Normally he wouldn't raise his voice, but he was deprived of sweets and Izuku didn't cook anything for the gang because they were rushed to help pro-heroes. Ida furrowed his eyebrow. That's rude. Please fix your speech. Grape juice here accidentally ended up here, he said, doing a weird arm motion too. Wesley felt his face crunch in disgust. Ok. Accident or not, get out, he spat, turning back around to focus on his job. Ida felt disrespected but grabbed Mineta, walking out of the building. Ojiro was confused. Why'd you rush in there? Mineta shrugged. I saw a hot babe in a police uniform, so I had to check if my eyes were right. Ojiro and Ida pressed their lips in a thin line. They were a bit pressed to be in the same group as him. Sally was at the community park. She was helping out the charity program with pro-heroes. Kids were saying hi and giggling along from the corner of her eye. She saw 3 students wearing UA uniforms and they also had quirk-canceling bracelets. Interesting, she smiled as they walked closer to her booth. Hello. How may we help you? Would you be interested in donating or helping us make toys for kids in the orphanages? She asked, although she was a bit ticked off that they were the ones who didn't help Izuku before she knew what she was there for, and she didn't want children to end up on the disadvantage because of her personal feelings about the 3. Kuda smiled. He nodded in wanting to help make some toys for children. Kuda, Tokoyami, and Sadu were currently helping out in fundraisers which were next to the park. The pro hero who was teaching them allowed them to have a bit of a break. 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝐵 and Sata nodded along. Sally smiled and guided them to the large picnic where children were talking and playing. The ones volunteering were sitting down, either making toys, reading to the kids, or teaching them how to write. Satu opted to help teach. He was pretty good with children, and it made him smile to see the kids playing with the kids in the orphanage. They didn't care about who had parents or not. They all had fun. 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝐵 was reading to a few children. He got a bit too into the lines of the book's main character. The kids laughed at his attempt, though 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏 asked the birds to entertain some kids as he helped with making dolls and other toys. Sally couldn't help but let her anger dissolve. These three seemed kind. She couldn't see them being rude to Izuku, so she deducted that they were bystanders. Faith was glaring at the amount of paperwork. She was assigned to a pro hero who was currently dealing with legal matters that had to deal with villains wreaking havoc. The pro hero laughed in pity. "Kid, it's okay if you want to take a break," he suggested, putting his glasses down as he stretched his muscles. Faith smiled slightly and nodded. She asked if she could head outside to buy a drink. "Ooh, can you get me some 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗏? Thanks," the pro said, giving her money. She sweat dropped at his carefree behavior but decided it was better than dealing with a strict person. She went outside and headed into a convenience store. She got the drinks and some snacks. During her waiting to get to the cashier, she saw a teen with multiple arms and floating gloves. Must be someone's quirk. She ignored it and patiently waited in line. The invisible girl saw Faith's lesbian flag necklace and started a conversation. Faith didn't want to be rude kinda, so instead of ignoring the girl, she gave short answers to whatever she asked. Shuji could see that Faith didn't want to talk to them, so he urged 𝐻𝐻𝐿 to get what she wanted. Faith bought the items and rushed out the convenience store. She didn't like how she had to interact with people her age that she didn't know. It wasn't fun. Izuku smiled brightly. He was assigned to help patrol a mall where he met up with Mina, Kaminari, Shinso, and Siro. They all chatted with each other. Since all of them were there but for different purposes, they all thought that this would be the one time they met. Coincidentally, they were planning on meeting up, of course, but they enjoyed this time at the mall. Mina buying boba tea, Siro buying cool earrings, Shinso wanting tattoos but he knows he can't get ones that were exposed, so he got one on his back which could be covered up. Kaminari bought matching necklaces for him and Shinso one. Izuku couldn't help but miss this group. He loves his gang but he misses the times where he hung out with these for almost every day. It was just for one day, so they wanted to hang out as much as possible, of course. With Izuku still doing his patrols, what they didn't know is that they would bump into each other again. It was just for one day, so they wanted to hang out as much as possible, of course. With Izuku still doing his patrols, what they didn't know is that they would bump into each other again. Jack screamed, their eyes wide as a plate. An actual plate was on the ground, broken, and their hands were in the air. Izuku stood still, his scrunched up and losing his appetite. What happened, you may think? Wesley brought a huge spider into the lounge. Hell no. The 2 words Izuku said before leaving, Jack not bothering to clean up the broken shards and booking it. Sally looked at the ground. Wesley, can you not take arachnids into the lounge? She said in a toned-down, irritated voice. Wesley pouted but went to his room's balcony to release the spider. Faith was cleaning the broken shards. Luckily the hotel staff didn't really check if there was one plate missing or broken, so they wouldn't be accused of property damage. The group booked a whole floor on the hotel. It was high-class luxury because it wasn't just rooms every corner, it had a villa-like feel to it. It had a lounge, multiple bedrooms, bathrooms, but no kitchen. For some reason the hotel was close to their assigned areas for their missions, so Izuku thought, why not use Dad's money to take the most expensive floor? Not like it damaged much of Hisashi's bank account. They were planning on using the plates for something, but since one got broken, that was now out the window. Deciding that food would make the day better, the gang got ready to head down to the hotel's food. Why don't we just get room service? Wesley asked, not having enough excitement to walk all the way down, but didn't have to since they'll be taking the elevator. Izuku shrugged. The food gets stale or cold since it takes too much time for them to bring it up, he explained, a bit annoyed since it was supposedly called one of the best hotels, but here we are. Parker shook his head. Just think of it as reason for you to move your legs, he mumbled. Wesley stopped complaining since he was getting food in the end anyway. All 8 of them stood at the elevator, Izuku pushing the button to get to the 24/7 buffet floor. They vibed with the elevator music since Izuku thought it would be fun to hack the music and start blasting a song that summons weebs. 16 Lily was recording the whole elevator ride. Izuku was proudly leaning on the elevator door as he sang, Wesley butchering the tune and just screaming the lyrics while headbanging like some sort of rock and roll geek. Parker in the corner, curled in a ball, Jack leaning and nodding there. Sally was laughing with Lily when Izuku and Faith joined Wesley on the headbanging, all three messing up their hair, but none minded. Unbeknownst to them, outside the elevator, when it passed a floor, the people outside stopped and stared. Hearing the music, they were both bewildered that the hotel would play that sort of music, and amused when the elevator stopped at the buffet floor. They quickly composed themselves and acted weirded out. Why would such a high-class hotel play that? Sally asked, her cheek resting on her hand as she had. Disappointed face. 8. The staff apologized to the teens who had to hear such music during their way down. Izuku waved them off, saying it was fine but to check and make sure it never happens again. When they were out the sight and hearing distance of the staff, Wesley and Lily lost it, falling onto the floor. They were wheezing. Sally and Faith walked in first, leaving the two on the ground. Jack pieced out. They wanted food more than helping their wheezing girlfriend. Izuku and Parker looked at each other before shrugging and picking the two up, dragging them in the buffet. Everything was going to be fine. Get some food, eat, possibly start a food war, you know, the normal stuff. The members of the gang who walked in first weren't moving, blocking the entrance. Izuku rolled his eyes. I know you want to keep the food, but can y'all move your asses? He asked, the group turning back to him, but their gazes weren't as carefree as 2 seconds ago. Izuku dropped his hold on Wesley, who collided with the ground. A loud thud. Ow, boss, that hurt, he mumbled, but not getting up. Sally looked down, her face showing discomfort. Faith was showing anger, just like Jack, but they didn't react to their emotions, knowing that if they did, the hotel would be trashed. Their leader was confused. What could they possibly have seen to make them act so serious? One. Izuku was standing frozen. He knew they were in America. He knew that, but why was his past classmates here? Izuku's eyes darkened at the sight of some of them. He lifted his head. He wasn't a pushover. His glare was enough to make some of the UA students tremble. His mouth. Everyone thought that a permanent frown would be there, but they were shocked to see a smirk. The smirk got larger, and now he was smiling ear to ear. Lily got up and sat next to Wesley. Both of them silently whistled to themselves. Lily took a picture, knowing the Izuku fangirls in their school would love to see this one. My. Look who's here. His group fixated their eyes at the people who participated in Izuku's bullying. They were now standing behind Izuku. In a clear line, they stood proud like soldiers who were awaiting orders. Even Wesley and Lily, who were known in America as the most laid-back ones, stood straight with their arms behind them. Izuku stood in front of them like a lieutenant. His aura was stern. Aizawa was proud to see his problem child become someone. Even he was intimidated of Mina, Shiro, Shinso, and Denki were at the sidelines, ignoring the situation and eating. Well, if it isn't the UA students who got kidnapped, ended All Might's career, broadcasted Stain's ideology, which had people distrust pro-heroes, as he listed their adventures, the class realized that they weren't all the invincible as they previously thought, and of course, who could forget the times when they failed to act like heroes? He laughed. Jack's sweat dropped. Sometimes the boss gets carried away with his speeches. It made him seem awesome and all, but his tone made him seem a bit villainish. Well, not that they minded. He was more heroic than most of UA combined. They knew that Izuku Midoriya was the one who helped them realize their quirks, and living situations didn't make them bad people. People think that Izuku was the leader because of his physical strength, which is true to some extent, but they acknowledged him as a leader when they were kids. The years when he, a small, quirkless boy, defended them against the prejudice of society, they all looked at his back with a sense of pride. They were best friends with such a person. Deku. Izuku's grin didn't falter. Sorry, I don't have any alias like that. Aizawa wanted him to have his moment, so he walked to the food table where he ate with his son and the other three. 5. Bakugo looked at Izuku. He changed. What a happy reunion. No. It was like the Deku they knew never existed, and to an extent that sentence was correct. It was like the Deku they knew never existed, and to an extent that sentence was correct. Giving them a flat look, Izuku clicked his tongue before walking to a large table with multiple chairs. His friends, being quick, followed and sat down next to him. The table they were at were right next to the table that Aizawa, Hitoshi, Denki, Mina, and Shiro were at. Izuku's glare immediately changed into a bubbly grin. Hey guys, he said. The group's sweat dropped at his change of attitude. The UA students that were standing were still shocked. Fixing their composure, they went and grabbed food, sitting down on the opposite area as Izuku. The UA students recognized the people in Izuku's group. They were sharing their experiences when they met Kirishima. Personally thought Jack was a cool person. Bakugo disagreeing. Uraraka's mind clicked. her head whipping to Lily, her eyes widened. I remember where I heard her voice before. She's the girl who was on call with Deku that one time. They nodded. Tsuyu and Yaoyorozu shared their experience running into Lily. The two girls thought she was a sweetheart, Uraraka thinking otherwise but didn't say it out loud. Everyone enjoyed their talk, albeit that it was about the group who were ignoring them, but still Todoroki stood up. He walked over to Izuku's table and bowed. Midoriya, I apologize for my actions during your stay in UA. I reflected upon myself and realized that I was not acting like a hero should, he said, although sounding a bit rehearsed, it seemed genuine. Some students in UA were shocked, some angered, and some wanted to apologize, but they were too much of a coward to. Izuku looked at Aizawa, who nodded. The scarfed man knew that Todoroki had agonized about this for years. He would hear the two-colored male in the kitchen at night, practicing how to apologize if he ever saw Midoriya again. Grinning, Izuku accepted the apology and giving Todoroki a pat on the back, the bicolored male let out a sigh of relief. He smiled. Mina stood up and grinned. Todubip, you should totally sit with us. Todoroki was a bit shocked. He tilted his head. Can I? Asking. Lily awed at the male, Wesley wondering how such a person could look so wholesome. Izuku nodded, Ciro brightening up and patting the seat next to him. Yeah. Come on, he said. Todoroki felt warm. It felt nice to have people welcome him to eat with them. It reminded him of when his sister would drag him and his brother to eat. Some of Class 3A wanted to talk with Izuku, but he ignored them. There were some who felt guilty and ashamed to talk to Izuku since they acted like bystanders. Sally, being the kind soul she is, nudged Izuku to make up with Kuda, Tokoyami and Sada. He smiled. He didn't really blame the ones who didn't do anything. Sure, wasn't heroic of them to just watch, but being brave was hard. Izuku talked to some of the UA students and made up with them. Some students like Bakugo, Uraraka, Hagakure, Yaoyorozu, and Ida were still passive-aggressive on Izuku, though he didn't really mind. During the field trip, the two schools decided to do a joint training as a way to warm up before they let it all out by being chaotic teenagers who run around, causing mass good chaos. Aizawa wasn't surprised that his students lost. To be realistic, he was impressed to see them last more than 5 minutes against Brunhart students. He's seen the American students on missions before, and boy were they brutal. Sometimes he sat in his seat, Mrs. Peyton looking at him with a sigh. How much do you teach these kids? She asked, curious since 3A was a bit behind. Aizawa shrugged. The minimum for me to get paid, he said as a tired sigh exited his lips. Mrs. Peyton's sweat dropped but didn't reply. The answer was pretty valid. I can't believe I was beaten with a sneeze. Kirishima pouted. Parker apologized when they were having their one-on-one fight. Parker took off his mask to use his quirk, and as he was emitting a minor sleeping gas, he ended up sneezing, which enhanced and malfunctioned his quirk into a more fast-acting sleeping gas. Tsuyu smiled. I feel inferior, but it was a good fight, Karo, she said, nodding to Faith, who she fought against. Let's all work hard to be on par with Brunhart, Kaminari said, fist bumping the air excitedly. Bakugo scoffed. You losers aren't on par with them, but I'm definitely better than those freaks. He clicked his tongue. Wesley was being held back by Parker and Sean. Faith, Jack and Lily had trouble holding Sally from using her quirk on the explosion boy. Lily smirked. Says the loser who lost after Izuku decided to open his eyes, she said, pissing the blonde Pomeranian even more when Izuku fought against Bakugo. He toyed with him for about 5 minutes with his eyes closed before he opened his eyes, lifting a finger up, and his robotic companions immediately throwing Bakugo out of bounds. I let that loser knock me out. Aizawa wrapped his scarf around Bakugo's mouth. Sighing, he dragged the angry boy away. A sweat dropped while the Brunhart students just asked whether he's qualified to be a hero. Suddenly something sparked interest in Brunhart students. How's 3B like? I heard there's some good competition there. Lily asked. Mina smiled, showing her phone, which had Kendo's Insta on it. They're pretty cool. Awesome quirks. They have more foundation than us, but we do have more experience, she explained. Lily nodded. It seemed that Izuku's villain-attracting vibes stayed in UA as he left for America, as if something was talking about him. Izuku sneezed. Parker noticed and handed him a tissue, which the broccoli boy thanked him for wiping his nose. He glanced at Lily, the one looking away as if she had done something too, ignoring his premonition, tossed the tissue in the trash before continuing his chit-chat with Parker. Denki, Shinso and Wesley. Denki sighed. Now I'm the shortest male in the group, he frowned. Parker was just slightly taller than him. Wesley, who used to be the shortest, laughed just to be absolutely petty, grabbing a drink from the table. Izuku listened to Mina's rambling on aesthetic pictures that they should take soon, sipping on the drink. Izuku hadn't noticed the weird taste. His eyes felt blurry. Putting the drink down, he clutched his head. What was happening? He was getting tired by the second, soon falling sideways and dropping onto the floor. 𝗧𝗑𝐁𝗵𝗲. Everything sounded faint. Izuku was alone. He was in darkness. He could only hear tiny voices that seemed familiar. What happened? I don't know. He just collapsed. Parker's eyes widened. What did he drink? He asked, frantic as the nearest medical professional was helping Izuku. Lily and Mina looked at each other before looking at the drink that Izuku set down. Wesley looked around and noticed there was a small mirror. He looked at Jack, who nodded, understanding what he meant. Jack used their quirk. Entering the mirror utilizing their quirk, they tried to look at the past, trying to find any significant information on what happened. The scene outside the mirror rewound to the time when no one was in the classroom yet. Inspecting carefully, they realized that someone walked in. The person had a cloak on, purposely hiding their build and identity. Jack furiously glared at the glass. They squinted their eyes, trying to identify the person. Their eyes widened. They saw it. One swift motion which led to the mirror getting a small glimpse of a very defining feature. Jack's eyes darkened. They knew who that was, no doubt. Quickly getting out of the mirror, they started marching towards someone. Everyone's eyes landed on Jack and Jack's eyes darkened. They knew who that was, no doubt. Quickly getting out of the mirror, they started marching towards someone. Everyone's eyes landed on Jack and, well. What are you, a TV show villain? Jack glared at Wesley before looking at the perpetrator. Why'd you do it? They questioned. Students were on edge. They were shocked to see Jack accusing a fellow classmate. One silence. A small noise of amusement left the person's lips. Whatever do you mean? She said, her face invisible, but you could tell she had a smirk on. Wesley's eyes darkened, grabbing the girl's throat and lifting her up. Noises of choking were evident. Uraraka rushed over to save her friend but was stopped by 𝗬𝗪. You can just prove your innocence, right, Karo? Tsuyu said, hoping to believe that Jack was just jumping to conclusions, but that was just hope. Uraraka looked at Tsuyu, betrayed. You can't seriously be doubting Toru, she said, her voice filled with sadness. Wesley harshly dropped the girl onto the ground before kicking her shins. Speak already, he said, summoning a card which activated into a sharp rock. Not the type of small weapon I was hoping for, but it'll do. Faith pushed Wesley off and glared at 𝐒𝐩𝐁𝐵. Using her quirk, a small croaking sound erupted from her throat before a full-on scream was let out. Stop. Please stop. Faith was used to this reaction. Normally their fears made them irrational. Everyone in 3A were shocked. A few of the girls wanted to rush and help their friend but was stopped. Sally was holding them back with her arm that had poisonous flowers sprouting out. Don't. If you step in during Faith's quirk is active, you'll end up making their fear worse, she explained with a motherly gaze. The others stood down but held a look of pity. 𝗂𝐭𝐻 was now on her knees, her gloves showing that she was clutching onto her hair, a continuous string of mumbling that consisted of, stop, let me go, please bring me back. The gang, minus 2 people, looked at each other. Did all the villains that you all encounter get to her head or something? Faith mumbled. Jack shrugged. Lily looked at Bakugo. You'd think he'd be the one who's like this, but guess not. She flipped her hair before looking back at 𝗂𝐭𝐻, who was now tearing up. Yaoyorozu panicked and rushed to Faith, shaking her shoulders. Can't you see her fear or something? Stop it. She's crying, she said in a loud tone. Faith growled. First, no, I don't know her fear. My quirk doesn't show me that, and second, you are supposed to be pros in training. If she's crying, then so be it. My best friend is in the hospital because of her, she snapped. Sally frowned. Faith's emotions often either increased her quirk's usage and intensity, so she knew that Yaoyorozu was making it worse for 𝗂𝐭𝐻 rather than trying to help. Please stop. I can't take it anymore. I'll do it. Just stop. They weren't fazed by her mumbles until a small name slipped her lips. I won't fail. Shigaraki, please stop. Everyone froze. So the villains did get in her head. Faith confirmed before looking at the shocked UA students. Guess we found a traitor, Lily said. Contacting Aizawa. Uraraka fell on the ground, her face filled with shock and betrayal. Faith stopped her quirk, her eye twitching a bit before calming down. Wesley crouched to the passed-out 𝗂𝐭𝐻 and picked her up. Throwing her unconscious body over his shoulder, Aizawa arrived and discussed the situation with the Brunhart students while questioning UA students. 2 American heroes were here to assist. One was a medical hero who was tending to Midoriya while the other was a mind hero, assisting to look at Hagikure's memories. 111 Izuku opened his eyes to a wild room. He winced. It was too bright for his liking. Looking to his side, he saw a sleeping, black-haired fella glancing at the door. He noticed a lady with a nurse uniform walking in, dropping her clipboard. "Oh my god," she said before running out. Presumably to tell someone that Izuku woke up. He tried to speak but his throat hurt. He looked at the wall with a sigh. Although his face was neutral, it seemed as if it was glaring. "Problem child, stop glaring at walls. It did nothing to you." 12 Izuku gave a small smile to the person leaning on the door frame. "Doesn't this seem familiar?" The greenette waved to the hobo-looking pro-hero. Aizawa walked in and patted his hair and looked to the male still sleeping on the chair next to Izuku. "He's been waiting for you to wake up for a while, you know." His rough voice was gentle enough not to wake Parker. Izuku chuckled dryly. His vocal cords were stinging but he could still make noise. "Barely, Aizawa gave Izuku a glass of water which he gladly accepted. As Aizawa left the room, a doctor showed up and informed Izuku on his condition. "You'll be fine with a few days of taking medicine. Luckily, the poison didn't get absorbed into your body fast enough, so we were able to extract it quickly." Izuku nodded, the doctor giving him the medicine for his throat before walking out to check on something. Soon a small yawn erupted beside him. "How morning, Izuku." Parker froze before shooting up. "You're awake." Izuku was shocked to see Parker raise his voice that loud but nodded, smiling. The boy next to him teared up, making the one in the bed look at him. "P. Parker, you don't need to cry. Poison wouldn't kill me so easily," he said, trying to cheer the boy up with other mumbling. Parker sniffled before chuckling. Midoriya tilted his head. "How long have I been out?" he asked, curious as to how effective the poison was for no reason. "It's been a month." 13-2, pardon. Letting out a loud, exhausted groan, the broccoli, who was sitting up, laid down tired, a small chuckle escaping his lips. "Well, I'm back now." He grinned, Parker nodding and hugging his friend too. "Yeah, welcome back." "Oh hell no. I know you ain't the only one hugging Zuzu right now," Mina said, barging in the hospital room with Zero, Lily, Faith, Wesley, Jack, Shinso, Denki, Sally and Sean, all of them rushing to Izuku and joining in the hug festa. Finished. Here's some behind-the-scenes scenes I thought about while writing this, so enjoy. At the start, well, Jack started, a slight pause before suddenly Wesley looked up from his phone. "Oh wait, I had a line right." He chuckled, everyone pausing and nodding. Chapter 1 Monoma, "So I only have one scene." Demon Jack, "Just say your part." Monoma rolled his eyes, putting his act on, speaking his line. "Oh hey, it's the guy who has a better potential than Mr. Anger Issues." "Wait, does it really say who has a better potential? Who wrote this script?" 3 He looked at the paper, Jack looked at the script. "Don't question it. We don't really proofread these lines," they said, shrugging. Lily held up a peace sign. Monoma have a flat look, before sighing. "Whatever, I want get this over with already." Chapter 9, Everyone shut up. Mrs. Peyton said, slamming her hand on the board. "A bit too hard, ow." The class chuckled. Izuku walking in the room. "Oh, so scene reset," he said, Mrs. Peyton nodding as her hand got red. The staff outside the backdrop gave her an ice pack.